I saw something you said about two questions that you've really tried to answer in your life, or two questions that you think matter, which is what is courage and what is being a man? Have you found answers to those questions, and how do you think about them?
You know, I did a podcast again with this guy, Mike Ritlin. I'm so bad. Let me look at this. He's a great guy, and he's got a, it's called Trico. He's got a dog company, and it's in Dallas. I just want to see what it is. And so I get his name right. But he trains Malinois, Mike Rittler. And he trains Malinois. And these dogs are, I mean, dude, a 67-pound dog will rip you to shreds. It will rip. I don't give a shit who you are. This thing was biting through the fucking bite suit. And I was like, oh my God. The pressure. And I was like, well, they would shut your arm. I don't care who you are. That dog is going to take you to the ground and you're going to be screaming and you're done. And the lack of fear in that dog's face, but it took him 3 years to get that dog to that point. So even a dog that's been bred for that, you can break that dog very quickly and very easily if you're not careful. And building that dog's confidence is a huge part of the technique when it comes to bite work. And I said, you know, he goes, I've learned more about human nature working with dogs than anything else. And this is a guy who was a Navy SEAL who was saying that I think some of it's a genetic anomaly, which is all of us don't have the same sense of self-preservation a lot of other people do. So maybe that's what it is, right? You're kind of born with a certain sort of lack of fear. Mm-hmm. So there is, courage is inherent in some ways. Some people just don't have the imagination for what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. But if you hear someone like Hickson Gracie will tell you that fear and intelligence are very closely related. And people who have no fear tend to be, there's the bravado of a fool. So, I don't know that I believe in courage, so to speak. I mean, you're brave when you have been taught how to navigate the situation. And I think there is something called courage to be the best you can be. Again, it goes back to, I do think courage exists. And courage is I would define courage as being terrified, but assuming the position anyway. Yeah. And so, that would be the idea that I can, but that would be something like sacrifice or something like self-control, which is how the Greeks defined character. The reason we admire people that do that, it's not that they aren't terrified. When Nelson Mandela was sentenced to death, you could see him swallow. He was terrified. He didn't show it, but he was fucking terrified. He was going to die. Nobody is brave. When you lock that cage in the UFC, I've talked to too many badass fighters. They're always afraid. Yeah. They're always terrified of that. You know, it's like, I got to fight now? Holy shit. This is the most uncomfortable shit. GSP, the stories about him going, I don't want to go out there. This is fucking nuts. Yeah. He's a brilliant man who realized this is the dumbest shit on the planet. But he was so good. And, you know, and my buddy Andy Stump talking about being a SEAL Team 6 guy and being the squirrel suit guy. You know, he used to hold the world record for the squirrel suit. And he's like, I'm just risk averse. I was just very careful. Now I think he's full of shit. He's also crazy, but you know, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So courage is probably not the Spartan, Greek version of charging the hill. That exists, but that might just be the idea that you're able to not indulge in. You're standing porter at the door of your mind and not allowing any of the bad. But that's a huge part of it too. Yeah. Again, learning what not to think about. Mastering the ability to allow only the positive things and the positive outcomes, potential positive outcomes into your mind and keeping the other things out. That's a huge part of it. And being a man, well, I know what traditional masculinity is. Stoic, provider, protector. And I agree with all that because that's inherent in us. It's not my fault. It's how I evolved. Mm-hmm. My aggression, I need it. My anger, I need it. My fear, I need it. My ability to prepare for a worst case scenario, I fucking need it because the world is a war. Mm-hmm. It's not a community. It's not how I think. Okay. And so there is that inside of all of us as men, but a man is not necessarily, you don't measure strength with one metric. Who can lift the most weights? And, the NFL, the stock market. You measure strength in many different metrics. How creative are you? There are people that can't do one push-up, but they can create beauty for its own sake, and it's what we all point to. I don't know that Steve Jobs had abs. I don't know what Steve Jobs' Fran time was in CrossFit. Okay. And I don't think anybody gives a fuck, but he was incredibly creative.
Yeah.
Isaac Mizrahi is gay as it gets. I don't want to live in a world without Isaac Mizrahi. I don't want to live in a world like Chechnya where they kill gay people because they're so because that fucking guy is so dumb.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand what people who are different provide a culture.
Yeah.
He doesn't realize that people who are creative, who might love differently or think differently, have other strengths that make your culture strong, make your culture creative.
Yeah.
That's the irony of measuring strength when you measure strength with one metric, which is the men who have the biggest club or the biggest guns, you get Somalia, you get Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The chaos of Somalia. I'm not talking about their cultures. I'm not talking about their people.
Sure.
I'm talking about the chaos that
system.
these countries became. When men rule everything with a gun, fuck off. It makes you weak.
Yeah.
That's the irony.
Which is another thing that makes America so awesome.
That's right.
Comparatively.
It's also why there's nothing left of Sparta but some shards of clay, some pottery.
Interesting.
And Athens has left a legacy of incredible literature and philosophy and everything. Yeah.
If you could snap your fingers and have 1 million engaged followers on one single platform, but it meant that every other platform went to 0, which one would you pick?
I would love to go to YouTube Shorts. I would love for YouTube to just... Because I think that I'm amazed at the power of the YouTube search engine.
Yeah.
And Instagram has also gotten to the point, the other platforms have gotten to the point where it's very scrolly and very swipey. But as far as, even like, I'm a big fan of Mr. Beast. And
who isn't?
It is. So I went to this Mr. Beast, it was like a 30-person mastermind, maybe like 4 years ago. And Mr. Beast was going to be there. So I was like, I have to go to this to see what he says. For 90 minutes, he talked about thumbnails.
Wow.
The whole presentation was 90 minutes on thumbnails.
Wow.
And he goes, I could tell you various ways in which you can build and grow your channel, but you're missing the point. He goes, we obsess. He's like, we build 20, 30, 40 thumbnails, and once we like a thumbnail, we go build the video and the idea around it. I was like, that is crazy.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of people in the room that said, well, I'm thinking about starting my channel. He goes, don't start your channel. Your goal is to build 100 thumbnails.
Wow.
And he goes, until you build 100 thumbnails, don't make one video. And like, for someone like that, who just got offered $1 billion for his channel, to be able to give that advice, it's insane.
Who just got offered and turned down
$1 billion.
Yeah. And he's what, 23, 24? Something like that?
Wild.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. 100 thumbnails before you even create a single video. That's the whole thing that people don't see.
Yeah.
Right? They see like this young kid YouTuber and just you immediately go to all the reasons why you haven't done anything big, you know what I mean? And so like you have to justify why this kid just got lucky.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just like, no. It's just before anybody else was even aware that YouTube was going to be a thing, this kid was 13 years old obsessing about how to build the perfect thumbnail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like not paying attention in school, just thinking about thumbnails and then video content and then ideas. And that's it. And then every time he made money, he just dumped it directly back into the growth of the channel instead of like, oh, I made 12 grand this month. Let me go buy a car or like, you know what I mean? Like, let me go get a fat payment on something. And he even said, he was on Joe Rogan recently, and I listened to that episode, and he was even saying that like, cause Joe basically was in the position that all of us are in, which is basically like as a 21-year-old kid, I think he's 23, 24 now, but when he started making good money, he was 18, 19, 20, like a young kid. He's like, Joe was amazed that he didn't get sucked into the traps of being a 20-year-old kid with a ton of money and influence. Yeah. He was just like, how did you escape that, basically? And he was just like, I just figured out it didn't really matter to me. Like I did get a car and I did get this and that. And then he said like someone broke into his house and stole a bunch of his stuff. And then he was just like, I just never replaced it after that. It made me realize how much I didn't care for it and didn't want it. And that I just want to keep making awesome videos. So then he just puts like, that freaking Squid Games video. It was like $7.5–8 million to produce a single video or something like that. It was like a full production. Yeah. But he's got 200 million subscribers plus across all of his channels now, So like, how do you
the
knock
crazy
it?
part there is when we are listening to a story like this, how do we learn from that, right?
Yeah.
And I always think about two things. The easiest two ways to upgrade our lives is control your environment and control the people in your environment. Literally, if they're the easiest way. So if you and I can get ideas on building a new show, I'm like, hey, let's take a walk, let's change the environment, let's recontrol the environment. Or let's add Eric to this conversation because now you're controlling the people in the environment. So as soon as you upgrade the environment or upgrade the people in the environment, all the stuff that does not matter falls off the wagon very quickly. Because what people are doing now is they go to social. They watch more videos. They keep swiping, and that does not change your environment or the people in your environment in any way. So if anyone's stuck right now, just say, hey, can I upgrade my environment or can I upgrade the people in my environment?
I'm curious on your relationship with money and how it's evolved over time, having grown up, with not a lot of it, and then getting a lot of it when you are that young. How did that start to affect, your relationship with your mom or your family or your friends? And then post Drake and Josh, like during trying to figure out what you're doing next, and then going back to not having it coming in all the time, and then doing more online things and now movies and all this other stuff. What has been your relationship or your perspective with or around money along the way?
There's this great Fran Lebowitz quote where she says, there's two types of people in the world, people who worry about money and people who don't have any. And I mentioned this in the book, and I wasn't even going to mention money because it's usually gross to talk about it. But my friend Ryan Holiday, who helped advise me on the book, said, you have to tell people how much money you made, because there is a preconception that when you do a show like this, you're set for life. And it would behoove you to correct people's perception that, I basically over 4 years made about $100,000 a year doing Drake and Josh. Now, no one's debating that that's a great income and that's a great middle-class lifestyle. I remember this woman yelled at me on Twitter the other day. She's like, I make half of that and I work with kids. And I was like, no one's debating that you should be making more working with kids. That's way more important. Absolutely. I was like, the only reason I even shared it was that no one thinks that you're making $1 million a year, but a lot of people thought I was. So that when you are in your 20s and you're doing work that maybe you're just doing it for a paycheck, or maybe you're doing something on social media or something that's not as, in quotes, glamorous, because you got to pay the bills. People look at that and go, oh, would you blow all your money? What were you, a typical, cliche young Hollywood guy and bought some like Italian supercar? And it's like, no, dude, I just had 18 months of runway when the show ended, and I had to keep working, as would anyone making a middle-class income. So that was my desire to sort of share that side of it, to just kind of correct sort of like the ubiquitous idea of what someone in my position would be making. And yeah, money, it's a great servant, but a terrible master. And only at 35, knock wood, that I've been able to create a certain level of security have I been finally able to not totally white knuckle life, because I grew up with very little money. So it scares the hell out of me, this idea of ever being in that position again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a gift now at this point, right?
Yes.
Because you grow up with money, you don't know what it's like to not have it. And I think it makes you act a lot more disciplined than you would, which is probably the biggest common denominator for most people trying to scrape their way out of poverty, is the lack of financial discipline to think of the future and think of, man, I don't want to be in this position again. Let me figure out a way out of it, and then be disciplined enough to stay in that position.
Yeah, it's hard. And like every asset can become a defect. I find for me, it can be a fine line of where, am I being frugal and smart, or am I being miserly? Like, am I over, and there's certain things like, I remember, and luckily I have this big brother from the Big Brother Foundation. He happens to work in finance, so he's a great advisor regardless. And I don't know. I don't know why I feel compelled to share this, but I remember like when my wife was pregnant, she had a doctor that she loved, and we have great, I'm lucky enough to have great insurance through the Screen Actors Guild, which is like a really, I'm incredibly lucky to have, because not everyone has that. And I remember my wife got pregnant and she had a doctor who she loved who happened to not be covered by that insurance. And I was like, well, this is simple. We should go with someone who's covered. Like, we have this great insurance. I've been paying into it for 20 years. And I remember I got on the phone with my brother and he was like, are you nuts? He's like, your wife is carrying your kid. She likes this doctor and she's really good. And yeah, it's going to cost you a couple grand out of pocket, but you have that money. And what else are you going to spend it on? Like, this is the perfect use of, in quotes, a luxury. Yes. And it was a great lesson for me to be like, yeah, like this is the things to spend on.
Mm. Yeah. It's not about things or all the other things that most people look at money being. It's options. It's the freedom to choose. It's when you're in that situation, you can decide to do something different. You're not forced into a certain, you're not forced into a certain mold because, well, this is how it is and this is all we have. So we have to take it. It's just options.
That's such a great point. You're right. And it's the luxury and the privilege of options, because, so few people are afforded that.
What did you think the differences were in moving up the ladder, let's say, in a corporate setting versus a political setting? What were the differences between those two?
At the very end, it's basically the same. And in all cases, you need information, education, knowledge to perform. So that's a common denominator to perform. You need knowledge, you need education, you need to be ready to compete on the arena. That's why I've been saying there's only one way that you can change a nation in one generation, and it's only through education. So anybody that has education, anybody that has information, anybody that has knowledge becomes almighty, all-powerful.
What's the catalyst for taking the knowledge and actually applying it, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that have knowledge, or they're almost like information sponges or junkies, where they just collect information, but they never do anything about it, or they never implement it or apply it or take action. And you're clearly somebody who worked very hard on education and information, but then you took that and then you turned it into something that you could actually apply and do positive things for the society with. How do you start doing that? How do you reconcile that?
Well, again, I think it's the same thing. It's if you have a dream, or in my definition, if you have purpose and you define your purpose, and that purpose you associate with the better of everybody else, then you have where to go.
It's bigger than you.
Yes. But how do you get there is where information, education comes to be. Use the same example. I was feeling that I had everything I needed when I finished my university, when I had my degree. I thought, I made it. Now I have knowledge. I know how to do things. But I started working in Coca-Cola and starting from the bottom, riding the truck, and every day was learning. So practice gives you as much education and as much learning as you get in a university. As a matter of fact, when I finished with the Coca-Cola company, I evaluated then that it was much more valuable to me, the experience of my career in Coca-Cola, than my 5 years in university. And but then I went from the global corporation Coca-Cola company to the small family businesses, farming, manufacturing Western boots. freezing vegetables to export. Then again, I said at the end, maybe I learned more on the small businesses where you have to get the payroll every Saturday to pay to your people, the few that work for you. And that experience was as much as or maybe superior to the experience in the global company. So again, it's learning for life. You never abandon learning. I'm 80 now. I'm on the 8th floor, and I learn every day new things. And so again, information, education through practical learning or through education, formal education or through experience, everyone counts and everyone is good.
Nobody likes to feel like third, fourth, fifth on the list. But a woman also doesn't want to be number one on the list either.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, she doesn't.
I don't like him up my ass too much.
She doesn't want my mission to be her because that's not a mission. A guy driven to become something greater than himself. She wants to support him and be excited to be on that train with him. But she wants him to turn and be like, I'm so glad you're on this journey. Let's do it together. Tell me about you. And actually be interested and feel like she's creating something with you.
Right.
That's the key, and that's the distinction a lot of guys don't understand. And so coming up with those 5 dials, it is to put that shit into perspective. And so now what we've coached 100, like we make a very bold statement at the very beginning to any guy that comes into marriedgame.com, and it's this. If you do the work and this doesn't work, I don't want your money. Like literally, I will refund it to you if this doesn't work. 200 guys have come through the program, 0 refund request. Why? Because if you actually do this work, it can't not work. I don't even know how many negatives that was, but it can't not work. Whatever it is, it has to work. So the dials are pretty simple in the sense of she's judging me. Are you a good parent? Well, there's a reason for that because women will always love their kids more than their husbands. The reason I know this is because women divorce husbands. They don't divorce their kids. That's just obvious.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's true.
Right.
So if I'm showing up as a shit parent, which I was, literally she goes, I don't even want to have another kid with you. I don't even want to leave our kid with you to go on girls' night.
I didn't ever leave her,
Yeah. So she's just getting up every night. Like I showed no interest. That's like your job. I'm going to kill buffalo. You raise the baby. And I understand how that's a thing, but you can't always kill buffalo all the time and not even come around.
Always and only do that one thing.
You got to like, hey, you're a dad too, dickhead. And I'm not patting you on the back because you watched her one night.
Yeah.
You're called a dad. You're not a babysitter.
Yeah.
Most guys really forget this. And so because they do think, hey, I'm protecting, I'm providing, I'm producing for the family. Where's my sex?
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, do you even care about your kid? Not really. Not until they get older and they're fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's not investing. So that's one of the dials. The other dial was the partnering dial. And so we score ourselves every single day on these dials so that we're always putting something in the bucket every day. And so every day, for me to get my parenting dial, to get that point, I have to spend 30 minutes alone with my daughter. Whether it's I'm watching her gymnastics, I'm driving her home, I'm spending one-on-one time with her. And that's just my arbitrary number I set. I'm like, if I can't put 30 minutes into my daughter every day, what kind of dad am I? The next dial is the partnering dial, and that's like the best friend dial. She felt so alone in our marriage because I wasn't spending time with her. Yeah. Well, who wouldn't feel that way? Bro, if you and I are best friends and you never spend time with me, we're not best friends. You know what I mean? So it's like women will judge that and go, wait, she goes, I feel alone. And most guys are doing this, and you'll relate to this. They're like sitting like almost mentally clocking down. Okay, if I put 17 minutes into conversation and just listening, I might get lucky that night.
Yeah.
Like the view of a man and how to get his woman actually attractive, and that's what I actually realized it's loss of attraction. She's like, I'm just no longer attracted. And attracted doesn't mean I've got big biceps, even though I do. It's this. I'm not leaning into you. I'm not being pulled in. I'm being pushed away. I'm being repelled. Like, and you see what happens. Women, they start to roll their eyes like, oh my God, this guy's such a douche.
We know when you're only doing something just to have sex.
You're just doing it for get
I'll
something.
listen to have sex. I'll do the dishes for sex. It's like, that's gross.
Yeah, it's transactional, but it's taker energy. And listen, like you and I have never had the honor or privilege of walking around looking like this. Do you have women coming up to you every single day and like, I just had to stop and say hello and get your phone number?
Not every day.
Yeah, exactly. I've had it happen to me twice in my life.
It's not a thing.
At fat camp. Twice in my life, I'm walking bareback in Newport Beach and a girl goes, and my body was really on point. She goes, damn, that is a great body.
That's when we met.
Yeah. And then 2 days later, I had another girl come up to me in a bar during the day, and she's like, dude, your body's phenomenal. I'm like, I bet you probably want to do things to it. She goes, I do. So that's happened to me twice in my life. That's happened to her twice a day, her entire life. So the
Give or take.
Yeah, the reality, probably more like 10 times. No. But the reality of what we're working with here is radically different. And so I realized that attraction was where it was at. She's no longer attracted to me. That's why she was leaving. And they're judging on how attraction. I had to also get real clear, this was my fault. Which a lot of guys are like, oh, that's beta. No. It takes a true man to realize, I fucked this up. Yeah. Which, if I'm the problem, which is a great thing, that means I'm also the solution. So what can I do? This is why we came up with the dials. So I realized that, dude, she wants to feel like my best friend. And when we really connect outside the bedroom, that's where we lead to connection inside the bedroom.
Women have sex up here.
Yeah. Their brain is their most, like that's their biggest sexual organ. That's their most powerful sexual organ is their brain. That led us to the next dial, which was the producer dial, which most guys are great at. We're good at killing buffalo. We bring home meat, feed the family. We bring home pelts, keep them warm. What else do you want? You want me to talk to you? Fuck you. I'm not talking to you. I got more buffalo to go kill. So guys are good at that, but what we have is become workaholics. And we go, I'm doing this for you. And she's like, no, you're not. You're doing it for your fucking ego. And I get the scraps. Go fuck yourself. I'm not going to be a part of it. That's why she's like, I'm lost in you. You're a big personality. And this is a very independent, knows who she is woman, and she lost herself. And for her, she's like, I resent myself for losing myself. Mm-hmm. And also, the business was going pretty well in the sense where I kind of lost my drive and ambition. I'm popping Chipotle burritos like they're Tic Tacs.
He got so fat.
I got fat. And she's like, where's your drive and ambition? When I met you, dude, you were going to take over the world. Mm-hmm. Now you've taken over a very small sliver of it and you think you're good? Mm-hmm. You're delusional, dude.
God, complacent, comfortable.
Yeah. And I've noticed that's actually the guys, what happens is because they protect and produce and provide, what happens is they actually become entitled. If I'm doing that, I should be getting sex. That's what most guys say. Yep. I'm doing all this. Where's my sex? Mm-hmm. As if sex is the payment for being a great man, which is not. So what happens is they become entitled, and entitled people become apathetic. When you become apathetic, that's what starts to chip away at the attraction.
I believe that you're born and you die, and everything in between, you're the architect. You don't architect your birth, or you don't architect your death, but you architect everything in between. And those, Chuck Daly, my coach in Detroit Pistons, God rest his soul, one of the greatest coaches I've ever been involved with, he said, you have the best mental health of any athlete I've ever met. And I didn't understand what that meant. And he's saying it in the 80s. Mental health is such a huge thing to talk about now. Yeah. But in the 80s when he said that to me, and I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I can yell at you and scream and you can feel whatever, you nod, and then you go out there and either do the same mistake or you do it correctly. I go, well, coaches yell. And, that's your job. But you know what I'm saying? You don't know what's going on inside my body. But I also, when I said I paid attention, I mentioned to somebody the rarity of being a professional basketball player. I take it so seriously because just in America, there's 379 million people. There's now 430 NBA players. Yeah. So that's 1 in a million just in America. Right. But the whole world, chances of getting to that point, slim and none, and slim left town.
Yeah.
So to sit and focus and say, this is all I want to, this is what I want to do. This is not who I am, but this is what I want to do. Who I am makes me better at what I do. And it was a focused understanding that everybody that didn't do it was a mentor to me, meaning what pitfalls and mistakes they've made, I stayed away from. I didn't try cannabis till I was 36. I didn't drink. I had alcoholics in my family. I trained every day. I love women, but that's not a vice. That's a compliment. And that was it.
It's a distraction, though.
It's funny.
Can be.
It's a necessary distraction. It's a necessary evil,
right.
brother.
That's right.
In school, I also stacked like 21 credits on 2 days because I had 3 jobs. So I was working for the Redskins when they were still the Redskins.
Yeah.
Very Googleable. I also was working for the NFL Players Association and Players Inc. So I was writing for NFL.com. I was in the marketing department. I had incredible mentors.
This is all during college.
All during college. I worked 3 days a week in DC and went to school 2 days a week. And then nights I was throwing parties in DC and like going volunteering downtown.
So really underachieving, really.
Yeah, I slept a ton.
Yeah.
But I really lived a lot of lives in that period.
Yeah.
And so I thought I actually wanted to do like sports journalism. And I remember Mike Wilbon, who's pretty prolific in sports, was a really great mentor during that phase. And I remember thinking I wanted to be like a talking head, like do sports journalism and media. And I'll never forget both in college and then just a couple of years ago, a recent conversation we had after he had, rest in peace, done a Kobe interview downtown. We used to meet up for hot chocolate. He doesn't drink. It would be like in between different things. We would have like hot chocolate meetings in like whatever season, whatever city. And he said the same thing to me that he had said back in college, which was, you care too much about everything. And I took it really personally initially because I thought he was telling me that I wouldn't be a good broadcaster. And he was telling me the reason he's a great is the only thing he cares about is the soundbite.
Yeah.
He was like, you have so many questions. He's like, you ask me questions I don't even think about.
Yeah.
I think about, where's my seat? What am I asking? Maybe who's in the chair.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
I want to get the best content, and I need it to be successful, go viral, whatever it is, be great for what it is. And he used to write for the Washington Post as well. But it was always about the content only.
Yeah.
And he always told me I thought like a producer because I cared so much about the life cycle, like what happened before, what happens after, how did we get here, what are the like, what's the story? Are we storytelling? Are we story selling? Like, what's the intent? And he would just be like, who needs to know any of this? You know?
Yeah.
And so I had to really think and receive that and be like, okay, maybe I don't want to go directly into being a talking head. Maybe I want to build brands. And so I graduated early in December, I think it was 2006. And I spent 6 months.
Well, we'll censor that part, don't we?
I spent 6 months funding my way to experiences. So I would take odd jobs, marketing, PR, press releases, filling in for managers that couldn't make it out to handle the talent or clients at Super Bowl, Sundance, All-Star Weekend, Oscars, Grammys. I literally did the entire event circuit and festival circuit that year. And I had amazing relationships. And I didn't consider it networking. It was truly networking because there was no agenda. There was no intention. There was only attention. And I love people and I love stories like you. And I feel very grateful for being able to learn from the best and ask questions to those that it's almost like being an expert in experts or hacking knowledge.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I didn't ever think about it as what can you do for me or will I get a job out of this? It was just probably really could have been much more strategic, but it wasn't. It was genuine. And I think that's why this many years later, those same relationships are still just as fresh and fostered.
Sure.
Because it has been a culmination of really curating and cultivating, not expecting or requiring anything.
So I took a credit card, a Discover credit card, and I said, and for the next 4 to 5 months, I made no money. Just paying my bills on the credit. Good thing I didn't have really big bills. I was still living with 5 of my friends. So didn't have big bills. Put it all on the credit card. No money. And every day I'm like, I refuse to be fucking broke. I am so tired of being a poor guy. And I'd read Rich Dad Poor Dad, so I had an idea that people could be rich.
Yeah.
Not playing football.
That anybody could.
That anybody.
Yeah, right.
You could do it if you were committed to it. Mm-hmm. So I went into it. I just went in every day. I wore a suit. I was all stoked. I had my own cubicle. The wall was all fucking tilted. I had a picture up of Danielle sitting right there. I had a picture of my son. And I walked down into the basement because I was a rookie. And so they put me down in the basement, way down in the back corner by myself by the coffee machine. And I would go down in there and just, I was committed. I was like, dude, it wasn't about pursuing prosperity. It was running away from fucking poverty. I was like, I am tired of being fucking broke. Yeah. I hate not understanding money. I am so tired of being this guy, like this fucking loser who just is got all this personality, but in the end of it, I got nothing to back up with it. I got no money. I got no business skills. I don't know what I'm doing.
You have potential.
And
that's it.
And that's guys I know today, guys I grew up with. They're now in their mid-40s, still filled with same jerk-off potential and haven't done anything with it. Mm-hmm. So it was just, dude, it was a moment, and it forged me. It took me 6 months. Then I made my first month. I made just over $10,000.
There you go.
And then that changed me. Totally. And then I was like, I remember sitting there a day and going,
First blood. It's like, that tastes good.
$10,000. Then I did it again, and I was like, and then it became an obsession.
Yeah.
People say I became like addicted to money. I became addicted to the feeling that came with producing wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you learn, you think, on that sales floor that you've taken into every other venture that you've tackled now to this point in life?
No one's going to save you. No one's going to save you. Pure commission is the coolest game ever. Because nobody gives a shit. You don't show up, you don't eat.
Yeah.
You show up and you don't close, you don't eat.
Can't be
It's
half-assed.
the purest shit of all time. It's like no fucking paycheck, no guarantees, no nothing.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing. So like sitting in that environment, and there were nights, dude. I mean, I'd be going like 4 days in a row with nothing, and I'm dialing 10 hours a day, just dialing, trying to figure out this back-asswards calculator, HP12C, because we didn't have the software and all this shit back then. I'm trying to do reverse I couldn't even do forward calculations with the calculator. Here I'm trying to fucking do it backwards while talking to somebody on the phone. I'm like, oh my fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know anything about money. I don't have a mortgage. I've never bought a house. I don't understand I don't understand money. I don't understand economics. I don't understand mortgages. So there was decision after decision I had to make sitting in that pit. The sales pit. And I'd listen to dudes closing next to me, and I wasn't closing, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, right.
Fuck. Fuck. And I would just stay at the office until like 10 at night, dial till the last minute I possibly could, and then I would get up the next morning and show up at the office, and I was like, if I just keep showing up and keep doing it and keep asking for feedback and getting better from the mentors and guys who were closing, because my manager was 19.
Oh no.
19, and he'd made $650,000 a year before.
Oh man. Because this was like what,
2001.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, this is the beginning days.
Great time to get into mortgages.
Oh yeah, bro, it's great.
Yeah.
Then,
so I was to say, fast forward.
Oh, that fast forward is 07, 08. I build my first couple mortgage companies, build one, sell it, build another one. We get into financial services, life insurance, financial education. We run the largest cash flow board game nights on the West Coast. 300, 400, 500 people. I've got like 250 to 300 cash flow board games. We're playing board games. We're getting people making money. We're helping to refinance. We're doing investment deals. We're doing all this, but we were not entrepreneurs. We were hustlers. So then 08 hits.
That you said something I think really profound there that might have just gone over a lot of people's heads. Can you say that one more time?
We were not entrepreneurs. We were hustlers.
Yeah. Dude, that hits home for me because that was the same way. I'm a door-to-door guy, 100% commission, door-to-door, several years, training, managing, just knocking doors, hustling. And then you get into entrepreneurship and you think that you're invincible because of how you did well in this other game. And then you start going like, oh, that's only like one aspect of a business. There's like 7 other things now that I have to learn that I did not expect I was going to have to learn. So what made you realize that you were not an entrepreneur?
My business like melted before my eyes. Like
during the crash.
Yeah, so pressure hits. I wouldn't lose my business now. But then like I was sitting in this place of we were riding so forward on the edge. And like everybody, like there's a whole group of people right now, there are realtors, mortgage brokers watching this show, and you're fucked. Because the only time you knew how to make money was on a rising market with a refi boom where real estate was going up and everything was going up. And now you're going to find out real quickly, like we did, that you were a hustler and you're not an entrepreneur. And the idea of being able to hustle, it only works so far. Entrepreneurism is a commitment to becoming a kingdom builder. I'm a king building kingdoms, not a soldier or a warrior making sniper shots. Like, I can be a warrior and kill, and that's great. Some people are born to do that, and they're born to work for kings. They're born to be under the shield and the protection of the king. And I was not a king at the time. So when the game came in, I had no foundation, no emotional fortitude, no mental idea of how to lead and help everyone get through this fucking time. And so we lost everyone. Let all of our teams go, almost 100 people. I had to let every person go, let my mom go, my brothers go, let everybody go. And then I made the biggest mistake ever. I thought I could just take all my personal money and throw it at the business and it would fix it. And that didn't work. So then I had no money myself. The business is shut down. I have no path. I've never made money doing anything else outside of serving tables. Our lifestyle is now like $25,000 to $40,000 a month, which was not a problem with the fact that we were taking home several $100,000 a month. So people are like, you should live in your means. I'm like, motherfucker, I was living in my means. I don't give a fuck what you're doing. If your money stops, you're no longer in your means. It's like, it wasn't about $25,000 when I'm making $250,000 a month. I was like, this was a time of change that I was not prepared for. And what I didn't know was happening was God was about to get my attention in the biggest way. It's like I was going to be brought to my fucking knees, and it was the roots of what would become the Wake Up Warrior movement.
Is there any final piece of advice, any final thing that you want to leave the audience with?
There was a quote supposedly by Winston Churchill, as a really famous, leader of England. So he returned to his hometown, and they was expecting this really, really great speech, and everybody was all excited to listen to what this great speaker was going to share with them. And the words was, never give up, never give up, never give up. And that was it. So that's my message to these young people or whomever have a dream. Never give up. Never give up. Never, ever give up.